start asking for advice. When we go in and talk to businesses, we really have to be aware of our approach and what we're asking from the business and at what point in the relationship we're doing that. Also, we want to look at how can we utilize these approaches, such as how do we take a job analysis and identify those unmet needs, and then how do we match that up? And lastly, that people have resources. So we're going to talk about resource ownership in a business within a business. So hopefully you'll leave with a couple of ideas that will keep you thinking throughout our time together today. So it's really important that we're doing research on both ends of the scale here. We really have to get to know our job seeker and answer the question, who is this person? If we can't answer that question, there's a lot of information that we still need to find out. We need to look at their skills, their interests. Those skills should be done through discovery activities, also identifying an individual's abilities, and lastly, also knowing their conditions for employment, which we all have. We all have conditions. We all have skills, interests, abilities. But you really, the more information you have there, the more you can answer that question, who is this person, the easier that negotiation becomes. Because on the other side of it, you also need to get to know businesses. And what you learn about the person should drive where you're going to do those informational interviews, your job analysis, needs assessments. And so oftentimes I think we do discovery, but we can rush into that job piece by either just having folks apply for job openings or just going to a business and saying, hey, are you hiring? Versus we also need to take adequate time to really get to know a business. And it's not always going to be the first business that you meet that's going to be a good fit. It may take various informational interviews before you have the opportunity to come in and complete a job analysis or to identify those unmet needs. So when you think about that relationship development, we really have to take the time to build that rapport and that trust with the businesses as well. Okay, next slide. So where are the businesses? I oftentimes hear, whether I am in Iowa or outside of Iowa, that no businesses are hiring, or we're such a small community that nobody is hiring. However, the secret is that businesses are always hiring. If you can make the argument, if you can show a business that this person could increase their bottom line, they're always going to be hiring. Now, they may not have a sign out front that says that we're hiring, but I guarantee you, if you can show them how this will benefit their business and increase their bottom line, they're interested. Also, there are 27.9 million small businesses across the country. They make up the largest fabric of businesses, but oftentimes as employment specialists, and I'm guilty of it as well, particularly as a young job developer, we go and we seek out those big box retailers. And we focus on retail, and we focus on the businesses that are hiring all the time. And oftentimes they're those big box retailers. I want to encourage you to get connected to the small businesses, the mom and pop operations, where you can talk directly to the business owner. Particularly in small communities, everybody knows everybody. I think of the story from 2012 when we were first doing the Employment First project, and CAS Incorporated has a beautiful story about how they connected with a business and carved out an opportunity with the cooler business. So shout out to CAS. That story still sticks with me. But I think it also really talks about the importance of connecting with small businesses and using that social capital. Also, there are unlimited ways to make a living. Easily, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as employment specialists to know all the businesses in our community or all the different career paths. Take that weight off of your shoulders. It's not about knowing all the ways to make a living. It's about getting to know people and really making that connection. So think of yourself as a connector of people, because the ideal is that we want to get to know a job seeker and connect them with other people who have similar likes and interests as they do. And there are, again, unlimited ways to make a living. So when we think of, does somebody fit into certain boxes, we limit our own creativity around job development. So when you're going into a business, kind of take off that lens of, I have to find a fit for somebody here. Just go in and learn information. Go in and seek, just ask for advice. How did this person get started? Connect them with a job seeker who has those similar interests. And we'll talk about that a little bit more coming up. Additionally, use your social capital. We all have social capital. As a team, you could, as an employment team, even just throughout your organization, have people write down who they know. Oftentimes, it's when we get outside of our circles. Acquaintances are great because within our own social circles, those are people who are oftentimes like us, but our acquaintances are different than us, right? And so they can connect us to other social circles and really increase our social capital. So connecting, just having your employment team write down, here are people I know and here are the industries that they work within. And that's the point of that, is not to say, I'm going to reach out to Joe, the banker, and say, can you employ Bob, my job seeker? The idea is that if I'm working with Bob and he has a financial interest that just keeps continually coming up, then maybe we can connect with the banker and say, hey, here's somebody who's really passionate about the same work as you. Could we just come and ask for advice? And that's how we start that relationship building piece, as opposed to, can Joe work here? Can Bob work here? So really look at how can you use your own social capital, but also the social capital within your organization. And job seekers and families also come with social capital. Another approach is using the employment planning approach from Mark Golden Associates. So as you complete discovery, the employment planning meeting is really this meeting that connects discovery to job development. It wraps up and puts a bow on discovery. And at the same time, you're talking about, here's everything we've learned about the person. Now, where does it connect? We don't think in job descriptions, but we think in, okay, where does this connect? Where does this person's skills, abilities, interests, where are businesses that same sort of skills, interest, and abilities takes place at? And we put those on the wall, and then we say, who in the room knows that type of business or can connect us? So again, we're using that warm contact, and we're not asking people directly for jobs. We're just going and asking for advice, and that's all we want at this point. Also, consider using community action teams to also build your social capital and rapport with businesses. This could be even utilizing your board of directors. And maybe you are working with 5 job candidates through discovery, and each board meeting, you go to your board and you say, here is Joe. Here's what we know about Joe so far. Here are his interests. It's in finance, legal, and agriculture. Who in the board knows somebody who we could connect with so Joe can learn more about those industries? You can also, build your own community action team where you're connecting. You would ask various leaders in your community to participate. And again, that same sort of sense. It's not about asking them for jobs, but pulling them in and saying, hey, can you help me get connected with certain areas? Okay. So the business conversation, the relationship building piece, think about the relationships that are in your life. Maybe it's your spouse, your best friend, your college roommate. How did those relationships develop? Was it that you, just went up to your spouse and said, hey, it's nice to meet you. I think maybe we should get married. That's the equivalent of going to a business and saying, hey, Mr. Business, are you hiring? Because I have job seekers that I can supply you with. You have to get to know, and oftentimes the answer is no, because the business is too upfront. We don't know each other yet. So carve out that time, make sure you're building the rapport. It starts with hello. Hello leads to a conversation, right? Look for commonalities that are taking place either between you and the business, but more ideally, what's driven you to that business is what you've learned about the job seeker. So for example, if we're supporting someone who's really passionate about culinary arts, we want to connect them with someone else who's passionate about culinary arts. And the introduction is, hey, I'm Ashley, I'm a career counselor, and I'm working with Joe, who's super passionate about baking. Could we just connect with you because you are the best baker in town? Could we just come and ask for some advice? And so you just want to genuinely go and ask for advice. How does that person get started? Can they tell us a little bit about their business? The icing on the cake is maybe a tour. And then hopefully we lead with a plan for a second conversation. Could we follow back up with you if we have questions? Or do you have other people that we could connect with that also have the same sort of interest or passion? And then those conversations lead to relationships. And those relationships then lead to trust. So if I, as a business, trust you as a job developer or career counselor, I am going to be more willing to come to the table and be creative to talk about my business needs, as opposed to just jumping in and asking for that information on the first meeting or at the first date, right? And then once I trust you, I'm more willing to negotiate. And you also will have more information to know what to negotiate and also what will benefit me as a business, right? So again, it's really all about who you know. So building that social capital is a really key piece, okay? So when we build trust, think about a couple of things. One, think about a compliment. Who doesn't love a compliment, right? So when you're talking to a business, they're the best business in that community. Tell them that you've, first, ideally, if you've been there and you've had a positive experience, tell the business owner that. If not you specifically, maybe somebody else you know. Or if you've never been there, be sure to compliment, wow, this, your business looks incredibly busy, it's incredibly cleanly, I'm very impressed with the way I was greeted. A compliment goes a really long way. Second, we're going in and asking for advice because, one, everybody is willing to give advice. Two, it's something that's easy to do, right? If I'm asking for advice, that's easy to provide, versus if I'm asking for a job, that's not so easy to provide because I don't even know where that fits yet. So then we do our research. The more you can come in knowing about a business, the better. Can you find their mission, their vision, their values? And can you talk about that as you meet them, as you get to know them? If you notice the CEO has recently been awarded for, their community activity, highlight that. Congratulations on your most recent award. That's really fantastic. Also use the person's name. And of course, be careful of criticism. We're not there to criticize their business in any way. So these are just, I know I'm probably preaching to the choir, but I think just general reminders for all of us and how we build that trust. So how do we determine business needs? So we have various tools as employment specialists to tap into. One, a business versus employer. We have to treat businesses as businesses. They do not exist to employ people. They exist to make money. Even if they're a nonprofit, they exist to make money. They just don't exist to make tons of money, right? They keep it within their organization. So we use informational interviews as one way to get to know businesses. And that's oftentimes our initial contact. We're going in, we're asking for advice, we're just collecting information at this point. We don't know where it's going to lead us, and that's okay. But it's just that introduction. Then we might have the opportunity to come in and job shadow or explore a short-term job trial. A paid job trial is even better. But a job shadow then allows us to see a little bit more of this business and also allows the job seeker to observe a little bit more of the job scenario or the business. And the trial piece allows somebody to get their hands dirty. If we can ideally get our foot in the door and see a job seeker doing, that's better than observing. Then you can also use the job and the task analysis, which Michelle is going to get more into, utilizing your social and economic capital. using time spent observing, and then time limited or paid work experiences. So we have various tools to really identify businesses' needs. So as we look at the relationship development, it really is a process. Just as it's a process to get to know the job seeker, we really can't individualize the relationship for both until we do our research on both ends. So ideally, it starts with that warm connection. Can somebody introduce us to the business? Then that may lead to an informational interview, the opportunity for a potential follow-up or a job shadow, then potentially we get to a job analysis, and then potentially the proposal or conversation around resource ownership or unmet needs. It's not warm connection job analysis. We have to build that rapport a little bit before we can get to negotiation or resource ownership, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
Sorry, I hit
all right.
Mute.
Oh, is that, okay. I was like, I think this is Michelle.
I know.
Take it away.
Probably like, Michelle, did you go to sleep? This is Michelle, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the business intake. And so I was a voc rehab counselor for about 15 years before I took this position. And when I met with my job candidates for the very first time, I took a lot of time during the intake to get to know them. And so I asked them questions, I listened to what they were saying, I reflected back to them what I heard their concerns were, I had empathy for what their concerns were, and I really tried to put together a whole picture of what was going on in their life and what kind of support they might need to be successful for their vocational goals. And so I think it's really important to do that exact same strategy with our business partners because we're really a consultant for our business partners, and we're really there to learn about what their problems are and to help them solve those problems. And so I like to think of my first meeting with a business being really similar to my first meeting with a job candidate. And so I might start by asking about the business. One question I really like to ask is, what are their highest turnover positions? Because this is where I start to gain a lot of insight into where we might be able to be the solution to one of the problems that they may be having. And then I ask a lot of other questions, but some of my questions are always geared towards learning more about how I might be able to help them solve problems. The point of my first meeting is to really get a second meeting. And like Ashley said, we're not asking for jobs. We're not talking about how we can be a solution. We're not talking about really our job candidates at this point because we probably don't know enough about the business to even make a referral of a job candidate. And so then when we're talking to the business and we're learning about their difficulties, we'll go to the next slide. We'll hear some themes of what's going on and how we might be able to be a solution. And so the thing I hear most often, and I'm sure it's what you hear the most often too, is there just don't seem to be enough qualified job applicants to fill our positions. And so I'll probably hear that said different ways throughout the conversation I'm having with my business partner. And I'll kind of end my intake by saying something like, I heard you say several times that you're having a real difficulty getting enough qualified applicants for the positions you have. And you're just really struggling to get people to come in and even apply. And even when they do apply, you're struggling to find people who have the qualifications and or can pass that background test. And it's really frustrating for you as you continue to have a lot of needs. So I'm wondering if maybe we could come back in, myself and maybe another person from my team, to just learn more about that position that you have the highest turnover in. to get to understand that position so that we might be able to help come up with a solution. Maybe we have some talented applicants that could apply, but certainly I wouldn't be comfortable making any recommendations until I learn more about your business and your needs. Or maybe we look more into the future and we connect you with our high schools that we partner with. And it wouldn't help with your pipeline today, but it would help with your pipeline for the future. But before I'm comfortable coming up with any next steps, I'd really like to come back in and learn more about the positions that you're having difficulty hiring or keeping filled. And so then we'll go to the next slide. And so I like to do this through doing a job analysis, but certainly you could do it in an informational interview and a job shadow, or through multiple visits meeting with the business. But I like to really spend some time getting to know the business. And so I think it's important to start with observation and actually watch the people doing the job. I remember not too long ago, we were in a business talking with a human resources director, and he said that everybody that he hired needed to be able to lift a minimum of 50 pounds. I'm like, 50 pounds? Like, you must have gym rats working out there, because that's a lot of weight to lift repetitively all day long. And he said, yeah, our people are pretty strong. And when we went out to the line and watched people doing the job, they were easily picking up these boxes and moving them. And so when we talked to one of the gals performing the duties, she said, oh, this box doesn't weigh more than 3 pounds. And so it's just really interesting to see how the jobs typically differ from the job descriptions, and even sometimes the human resources idea of what the job looks like. So that observation is just so important, to actually watch people doing the job, talking to them about what they love about their job. If they could change anything about their job, what would it be? Really getting to know what the culture of that particular environment within the business is. Also, I like to do interviewing with the staff performing those duties. I can learn more by talking to the staff who actually do the duties than I learn by talking to the managers. But it's important that I talk to the managers too, because we need to learn more about onboarding. How do you bring people on once you've decided to hire them? Does everybody get onboarded the same way? Or if other people learn differently, would you be willing to onboard them in a manner in which they can learn best? So I really like to interview from the top all the way down to the person actually doing the job, and multiple people doing the job if I can, to get a full picture of what that job really looks like, tastes like, smells like, what our job candidates are going to be doing every single day when they go to work, and what their coworkers are going to be like. I also like to do videotaping because I like to detail out the job tasks of each of the different duties that the job candidate would be doing, or that the person performing those duties are doing. And so I like to videotape so that when I come back and type it out, I have a visual of what the person's doing. And also when I'm videotaping, I like to ask questions. So I have my verbal cues as well. And I feel like that helps give me a better analysis of the job, because I can come back and study it and really look at it in addition to the notes I've taken, of the interviews I've done. And I feel like I'm able to give them a better report at the end. But I'm able to do a better job of matching my candidates because I have the whole picture. And I'm taking the time to get to know my business partner, as well as I took the time to get to know my job candidate while I was working with my job candidate to prepare them for employment. We were going through setting up goals with our job candidates and career exploration, and really getting to know our job candidate through the process. And I'm just doing the same thing with our business partners. really getting to know them and what they need and how they work and who fits in best and who stays the longest, what kind of personality stays the longest. I also like to take pictures, and I like to use the pictures to show job candidates what the environment looks like, what the work looks like, because I think that helps us do a better match for both our job candidate and our business partner. Of course, analyzing. We've gathered all of the information, and this is what we're really good at. As we gather all of our job candidates' information, their medical information, their psychological information, their psychiatric information, their case management information, their voc rehab information, we gather it all and we analyze it, and we come up with a great plan to help our job candidates move forward with their career goals. And we're doing the exact same thing with our business partners. We're analyzing everything we just learned. We're analyzing all of the interviews we completed, and we're coming up with a solution to the problem they told us that they were having during that intake. And so, that solution is going to be different for every business depending upon what we found and what their needs are. And so that solution could be job shadows with our job candidates, which is introducing them to potential new applicants. It could be making better referrals by doing the job analysis, and we might actually have some job candidates after we've been through this process. That solution might be after we've made some really good referrals, made some really good matches, we're going to have that retention, and when there's retention, the business has saved money. We might even have a solution at the end of the job analysis to do a job carve. We might have found opportunity for that business to save money by breaking a job down into 2 different jobs or having 2 people do the job. A lot of times the business will say, we only hire full-time people. We're not interested in having part-time people. But when they can see that financial value of having people come in and work part-time, and it really opens up their talent pool, they're saving money on other benefits, because oftentimes for part-time workers, they don't have to pay the full-time benefit of the medical insurance, and they're gaining a lot of potential applicants that they hadn't ever considered in the past. And so the job analysis is, of course, one of the things that I think is the most important. And I wanted to talk a little bit on the importance of doing a good job analysis. And so when we're looking at the essential functions of the job, we're just going to talk for a minute about a grocery store clerk. And if I went out and I did a job analysis of somebody stocking shelves at my local grocery store, this is sometimes what I see comes back in as the functions of that job. Stocking shelves, bagging groceries, and carrying groceries out. And when I look at those functions, am I able to determine if an accommodation is needed for my job candidate? Am I able to see if they did hire my job candidate, where they're struggling? If the business calls me and says, Michelle, they can't stock shelves, I don't know where the breakdown is, because I haven't taken the time to learn all of the duties and all of the different things that they need to be doing. And so then our job candidate is just done when the business says they can't do the job. I don't know when they're competent or when our job coaching can start backing off, because I don't know all of the tasks that the candidate's going to be working on. And most importantly, when I only have 3 or 4 things written down, I don't even know really if they're going to be a good match. But when I look at breaking it down into multiple steps, and so for our grocery store clerk example that we were using, for using stocking shelves, a job analysis that we recently did, we used videotaping, we used interviewing, and we used observation. And we noted that the boxes start on a U-boat, which is like a pallet, to be put on the, they're put in the middle of the aisle from the truck. And then that's where our job candidate would start. So they start by using a box cutter. They open the boxes. They look at the UPC order code on the box and they match it to the shelf rather than just matching the can to the shelf. They need to make sure that they're matching the codes so that each product is in the right place. They're taking inventory from the box and documenting that inventory. They're looking at the dates of the inventory and they're moving the newest dates to the back with the oldest dates coming to the front. And there were several more steps. I just didn't include them all on this example, but I wanted to go one step further with this sample. So maybe I have a job candidate who said, I've always wanted to stock shelves at the local grocery store. And my job candidate, I think, would do a really good job based on what I know about them. And so as I look at the function, I noticed number 2 is that they need to use a box cutter to open the box. And maybe my job candidate has epilepsy and they're not able to work with a box cutter. And so because I know all of the steps and I know that my job candidate wouldn't be successful with the box cutter, and I could say to the business, you know, you talked to me when I met with you and your staff about the importance of being friendly and making eye contact and just really fitting into the culture of your business. And I have this young man that I'm working with, and he would fit into the culture. If you say helpful smile in every aisle, he's always smiling, and I think he's what you're looking for. But he can't use a box cutter, and so I wanted to talk to you about him using a device called an OpenX package opener, which is a ceramic blade, and he wouldn't be in jeopardy of injuring himself at all. And so just really understanding the tasks of each job and matching them up to our job candidates and having those accommodation ideas in mind when we're actually at the point that we're going to propose a job candidate to the business is critical. The last thing we want to do is say we have this great guy, he's going to be amazing, and we refer somebody who can't use a box cutter and he hurts himself on the first day. And so it's just so important that we take the time to get to know the tasks of the different duties that our job candidates are going to be performing. And you might be thinking, gosh, that sounds like an awful lot of time you're spending with the business. Is it really helping the business, or are you just being a burden on the business? Because it sounds to me like you've spent hours with them gathering all of this information. And so I just wanted to read a quote to you from one of our business partners. When we asked them what they saw as the most value of all of the different services we provided to them, this is what they said. One of the easiest things about working with your agency was you came in, you spent quite a bit of time working with us, our business, asking a lot of really good questions, some of which made us think. You followed us, you shadowed us, you took videotape, pictures, everything imaginable. And that really gave you a sense of what we were looking for in an employee, their duties, what could be filled, the jobs that could be filled. So it wasn't a mismatch of sorts. And so I wanted to tell you that because that came from a business. That was the appreciation of business said to us for spending that amount of time and learning these jobs and making sure that we really understood what they were looking for and how we could help them versus, like Ashley was saying earlier, just saying, hey, we have a job candidate. We think they're going to be a good fit. So we can move on to the next slide. Oh, I was going to give a couple of examples. So you can back up. I'm kind of silly sometimes, and then Ashley's going to take over on resource ownership. But I wanted to give you a couple of examples on how the importance of doing a good job analysis works. We had an instance in one of our offices where the staff did a job analysis and they said, greet customer. It was for a hair salon, and this person was going to be the upfront person who would greet the customer, check them in, and get them to their stylist. And as we were talking about the greeting the customer, we talked about how would you break something like that down to make sure that we were referring the best person we could, because this person is going to be the first person that businesses see when they come through the door, or that customers see when they come through the door. And so we really talked about greeting that customer and breaking it down to looking into the eyes of the customer, saying hello, smiling, acknowledging them, and then asking questions. And maybe our job candidates could do all of those, but look them in the eye. And so then that's just another opportunity that we can have that accommodation rather than have our job candidates be not successful. And so by breaking down the jobs and the job analysis, we were able to job carve. And I know Ashley's going to talk about this more. I just wanted to give some real life, honest, true examples of when this has happened. One was a business we worked with, and they made doors. And one of the things they needed to do for the doors they're making for Menards was make very specific boxes and pallets for Menards. They were just really specific to what Menards wanted. And so they couldn't use the boxes or pallets that they used for any of the other door makers. But Menards was their largest contract. It was a long contract, and it was their highest money-making contract. And so they did not want to lose this contract. So as we were listening and talking and observing, we thought it made sense for them to make a box maker, because they had people coming off the line where they were skilled workers making $20 an hour making doors, and they were coming off the line, slowing down production to make these boxes. And this was a business that's constantly hiring. They're always looking for talent. They don't keep talent. Well, we learned that talent was leaving because it was just too chaotic to leave the line to go make these boxes. And so we proposed that they hire somebody to come in and just make the boxes and the pallets for all the Menards stores. And we proposed that they work part-time at minimum wage or a little above. And it would save the business money, because their skilled workers would be doing what they were hired to do at the higher wages. And our job candidate would have an opportunity to come in and do a job carved job. And our job candidate was actually hired to make boxes. They found it so valuable, in fact, that they hired him full time. He did such an amazing job. He went on to make doors on the line, and they brought another person in to make boxes. Our counselors have continued to do a wonderful job with this business. And because we listened, because we were able to come up with solutions, because we were able to solve their problems, it wasn't about placing our most significantly disabled job candidates. That's not what the entire premise of the visit with the business was about. It was about helping them to gain and retain valuable employees so they could continue to make money. Really, it was about them making and saving money, because that's what's important to the business. And our counselors now are able to just call over there if they have a job candidate that they feel is a good fit. And I want to give you one more example, because Ashley talked earlier about a business that wasn't hiring and what we might do. Well, this business was not hiring. They were a veterinary clinic, and we had a lot of job applicants who wanted to be veterinary assistants. And so, like Ashley said, we called the business and we said, we're calling you to gain information about your veterinary clinic. We saw on Yelp you're rated the #1 business in the whole Waterloo area. As you might or might not know, we have a lot of students who are interested in veterinary care assistant. And so we're just really excited to come and learn from you more about what you do and how we can better prepare your future workforce. And so we scheduled a meeting, we did our intake, we really learned about what their needs were. As we were meeting with their staff and doing job analysis, now they didn't have as much turnover as other businesses, but as we were having conversations and working with the business, it seemed to make sense that the people that they hired to be vet assistants would continue working with the animals, and then they would hire a person to come in and do the janitorial of the doctor's offices. And so they thought that would kind of help with the vet assistant position, kids who went to college to get a 2-year degree to be vet assistants, if they were just mostly working with the animals and if they took that cleaning duty out of it. Not that they had a lot of retention issues, but it might help with some of those retention issues. And so we had a job candidate come in and just show them how he could clean. And do you know what? He cleaned so amazing, incredibly well. They didn't want anybody else cleaning the room. These rooms were so spotless and so wonderful. The doctors came in and they said, John was here last night, wasn't he? And so the doctors are like, we need John. We need John more than John needs this job, because John cleans better than anybody we've ever seen. So they actually created that opportunity for John. Not because they felt bad for John, but because their business needed somebody who made that place polished. So when customers came in, they knew it was a sterile, polished, clean environment that they were dropping their pets off to. And so I'm going to stop because I promised I'd only talk for 20 minutes.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. All right. So as Michelle was talking about, that job analysis really gives us a picture of the research part on the business end, right? So who is this business? And one of the things that you may identify is that there might be opportunity for resource ownership. So resource ownership is when a job seeker brings a resource to the job that would allow the business to increase their profit. So essentially, think about if you went to college for a 2-year or 4-year degree or have a certificate, that you invested in that opportunity, right? So many of us spent a lot of money on college, but we take that degree to the business and we say, this means I'm trained to do a job. This means that I've done a certain skill requirement, that I come with a certain set of skills, right? So for many of the folks that we have the opportunity to support, it may not be a college degree with that piece of resource. However, it might be a piece of equipment or tools or a vehicle that the job seeker brings with them. And in turn, that increases the profit of the business. So we'll look at a couple examples, but one, it creates work, it improves productivity, and it creates community economic development because we're bringing resources, the individual is bringing resources to the business, and it benefits the business. Now, however, if that individual was fired, then they take their resource with them, okay? So let's look at how do we identify if there's potential. So when completing informational interviews, when you're completing a job analysis, you can be building a rapport and asking some probing questions, such as what's up and coming in your industry? What's your next big investment as a business, or some hot products, right? For a lot of small businesses, investing in a new product or the bigger and better product, that takes a lot, that might mean an entire new line of credit for that business. However, if that need lines up, if we measure that back to what we've learned about in discovery about this person and it lines up, there's the potential that we could negotiate employment based on this individual bringing resources. So also, what are tasks that maybe seem to be at the bottom of people's to-do list or struggle to get done? What's the largest area of growth? What's your competition doing? Who's your competition in the market? So these are, again, just probing questions. It doesn't mean when you ask this question, it's going to come up to you on a silver platter and say, here's this resource ownership opportunity. But for example, I was training last week, and part of the training, everybody goes out on an informational interview, and the informational, a group came back from their informational interview, and they were talking to a business that was exploring whether or not they were going to add in like a espresso machine for their customers so that they can serve drinks. But they're like, well, this would be a big investment. But they were asking questions along this line, and they said, we think maybe it would bring more people in, and something that we could offer. So even just in an informational interview, that might spark off an interest, but it needs to align with the job seeker. Next slide. So with resource ownership, how do we fund this, right? So great idea. Can everybody still hear me? I'm going to assume so, but the little lady on the phone just talked to me. So anyway, one of the biggest ways is for PASS plan, right? So Plan for Achieving Self-Support, which is a supplemental security income work incentive that allows beneficiaries to set aside their resources for an employment goal. Two really important pieces here. With an SSI beneficiary, it's really important that a PASS plan supports them to be less reliant on that benefit, or if they are a Title II beneficiary, it needs to support them to work off of that benefit. So SSA, Social Security Administration, says we're willing to help invest in you in this this employment goal if it's going to make you less reliant on your benefits, right? That doesn't have to happen immediately, but that goal has to be kept in mind. So concurrent beneficiaries, which means I receive both SSI and a Title II benefit. A Title II benefit is Social Security Disability Insurance, what we know as SSDI. It could be a Child Disability Benefit, is CDB. Those are the two that we most often see. But if someone is receiving both of those, they're a perfect candidate for PASS, and I'll show you why. And then also, you can also, be communicating with your voc rehab counselor, because there might be the opportunity to use that as self-employment as well, and there could be potential resources available to explore. So let's look at the PASS plan. So here's an example of Joe's PASS. So on the left-hand side of your screen is an example with no PASS, and on the right-hand side is with a PASS. And so, for example, you would look at, okay, here's the SSI check, right? So the person's SSI check is being reduced because they're receiving a Title II check, which would be their unearned income, which you see on line 2. So we're going to say that they have an SSDI check coming in at $420. So that's reducing their SSI check, okay? And you don't have to memorize the equation, but know that if I set aside those resources to be from paycheck, just the example of breathing,
Ashley, you're cutting up a little bit. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, okay. Sorry. No, thank you. Is this better?
Much. Thank you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, so because we only have a few minutes, so what I want you to leave with is knowing that they can set aside that Title II check in a PASS account, which they can save up resources for that employment goal. Also through Griffin Hammis Associates, we have a pool of money through the Kennedy Loan Foundation that we can also use to set aside a CD for an individual, and then so that there's no risk for the bank, and that person could buy that product and then use the PASS to pay back. So it's certainly something you would want to connect with a benefits planner on. I'd be more than happy to talk to folks at more length around it, but know that if someone is a concurrent beneficiary, so you know that they receive Title II and SSI, they're potentially a perfect PASS candidate, which means they're sitting on resources, and if the potential for resource ownership made itself available, that would be an opportunity. Okay. So here's an example of an individual who spoke, I believe, at our Iowa APSI conference a couple of years ago. This is Scott. Scott is from Minnesota and worked with community involvement programs, which is a provider in Minnesota. And Scott was working regularly at a Minneapolis bakery. And through the relationship with the business, they identified that one, Scott wanted more hours, but two, the business was, they asked those questions. What are things that you would invest in? And so to make a very long story short, Scott was able to invest in the ice cream machine, and now he makes Scott's ice cream, but he sells it within the business that he worked in at the bakery. So now the business gets to offer an additional product. Scott is working more, he has a passion, and he brings something to the business that's really valuable. Next example. This is another example of, this one's a Christian catfish hole. And so one of my colleagues was working with an individual out east. And so the resources he brought to the table, there was no one that would skin a catfish essentially in this Christian catfish hole. And so it was something that they could offer their customers that other catfish holes weren't offering. So he would, he had the digital scale. So he brought the scale, this table and shelf construction to set up his workspace. He also helped retrofit the shed for his workspace, and then brought knives and the machinery. And then the funding sources were a customized employment grant and Voc Rehab. So it doesn't have to be that an individual has to use a PASS plan, but that's just one option and something to explore, that if you are doing discovery with an individual, get to know and look at what benefits they're receiving, because those resources might be on the table. Okay. So also the opportunity may present itself for a business within a business. So the ice cream example is also a business within a business, right? So the business operates as its own entity, but within another organization. And so essentially there's much lower overhead for the business that operates within it, and also brings in maybe a new customer base or more customers, or increases the profitability of the business. So it's built-in support, and it's a customer base that might also already exist. Go ahead to the next slide. Thanks, Jess. So examples include an espresso machine within a bakery, car detailing within an auto garage, large capacity washer and drinks within a laundromat, a gift stand within a zoo. There's a great local example in Des Moines where it's an auto body shop, but inside the auto body shop is a place where you can also get your hair done. So the stylist offers, her coloring and cutting business, while at the same time you can go get your car fixed. So disability or not, the business within a business concept is always happening around us. It's just getting to know the businesses, right? So the opportunity is certainly there. We just don't get to those opportunities for business within a business or resource ownership unless we take that time to really get to know a business, to do the job and the task analysis, and really get in there and get to know that business, as Michelle talked about. So I believe that concludes our time together. A couple of questions to get you thinking, and maybe if you're working within your team or watching the webinar, some things that you could talk about of what's the most recent business that you met with, particularly a small business. What's the most recent job analysis you've completed? I know everyone is so busy, and sometimes carving out that time for a job analysis isn't easy. And then how have you used your own social capital in the last week to complete a job analysis or to connect with a business? So some conversational questions that you can use and apply to your team. So thank you so much for the opportunity to present, and please feel free to email me or contact me with any questions, and hope to see all of you soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michelle. A great presentation today. We really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining today. That will wrap up